Welcome to Politics Done Right on KPFT. I am your host, Egberto Willies. This is the progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. Give me a call at 713-526-5738. That is 713-526-KPFT. Remember, you can also send me a tweet to EGBERTOWILLIES. That is at Egberto Willies. Let us engage. It is politics done right.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Welcome to Politics Done Right. I'm Egberto Willies, your host. Thank you so kindly for spending this hour with me. Today we're going to have a great discussion. I have as a featured guest Tim Danahey from the Tim Danahey Show. Actually, he's found at danahey.com. We're going to discuss the election and some of the reasons that we believe that Donald Trump pulled it out. We had a somewhat different opinions in certain areas, but altogether, I think the meshing of these ideas make a difference, and that is one thing we have to learn going forward as being folks that are willing to entertain different sides of an issue as we come together to solve the very many problems of our country. Now, additionally, the blog of the week is going to be interesting. The blog of the week is about fake news and what caused fake news. I want to get to that rather quickly. But before I get that, let's get busy with the program. It has been 2 weeks since the election of Senor Trump. And the question is, where do we go from here? I tell you what, we'll survive. We've survived much more before, and we'll survive this as well. What is very important, and I'll read a snippet from Mike Stafford, an ex-Coffee Party member, an ex-Republican person who has some advice for us in general, and what I consider to be very good advice. We'll talk about that when you listen to the interview that I had with Tim Danahey. But before we go, let's go ahead and get started with the program. Remember, first of all, it is important that you know one thing. I want to remind all our listeners that KPFT is a bastion of intelligent voices and programs. As a political activist myself, there are several of my favorite programs that I want you to be aware of. Specifically, The Monitor with Mark Bebawi on Mondays at 7 p.m. Think Wing Radio with Mike Honig on Mondays at 9 p.m. Then we have, of course, Partisan Gridlock with Jeff Berg on Fridays at 3 p.m. We have Open Journal with Dwayne Bradley, Marlo Blue, and Shetty Van Verkel every weekday at 8 a.m. And of course, there is my favorite musical show, Jazz Latino Afro-Cuban Latin Jazz, at its best, hosted by Juan Flores on Monday at 10 p.m. And there's a couple of new shows that I've added to my list. It's one's called The Human Condition at 3 p.m., followed by The Minstrel Show with Don and Dwayne at 4 p.m. on Fridays. This occurs on KPFT HD3. Check out our full schedule at kpft.org, where you can find programming from music to politics to medicine to the eclectic. KPFT is listener-supported public community radio station, so please remember that if you like what you hear, visit kpft.org and ensure we remain a strong, viable community radio station that provides news, programming, and information not influenced by whom? The corporatocracy. This is KPFT 90.1 FM in Houston, Texas. We want to hear your voice. We want to hear your thoughts. Let's talk. I'll also be following hashtag Politics Done Right, as well as my Twitter feed, Egberto Willies. So please remember to go ahead and follow me, Egberto Willies, Egberto Willies on Twitter, and go to Facebook and follow the Facebook page or like the Facebook page, Politics Done Right with Egberto Willies, as well as liking the page, Egberto Willies. Folks, you know what time it is.
It's time for the weekly blog post.
Okay, let's get busy with the blog of the week. Anyhow, I titled the blog of the week, and it has to do, like I mentioned before, with fake news. The title of the blog is Mainstream Media Just Projecting with Facebook Fake News Concern. Again, repeating, mainstream media just projecting with Facebook fake news concern. Here it goes. Why the sudden concern for Facebook fake news by the mainstream media? It is nothing new. It is likely much more sinister than benevolent. The reality is that the misinformation allowed on mainstream media is much more dangerous. We should all want to scream about the mainstream media's sudden concern with fake news on Facebook. The reality is that mainstream media misinformation is worse, as it comes with a degree of gravitas. President Obama recently called out fake news on social media as a threat to our democracy. He forgot to mention the sources that likely did the most harm to his governance and the mainstream media. It was actually the mainstream media. The mainstream media is acting as if disinformation is a new problem. It is not. In fact, way before it was vogue on Facebook or other social media domains, it was rampant in print, on cable news and broadcast news. And I'm not just talking Fox News, even though they made it an art form. One must not forget that the New York Times reporter Judith Miller willfully allowed others to mislead her into writing the ties that led us into the Iraq War. She gave the Bush administration lie the cover of objective journalism that was not objective at all. Her lies were complicit in getting hundreds of thousands of Iraqis and thousands of American soldiers killed before it helped lay the framework to war on false pretenses. It helped lay the framework for war on false pretenses. Mainstream media were instrumental in a less than optimal Affordable Care Act. Why? They were passed through conduits for lies from the right. They knowingly allowed terms like government takeover of healthcare, throw grandma under the bus, death penalties, and other verifiable lies to become part of the lexicon. In other words, they were delivering fake news on behalf of the right. Currently, they allow Paul Rand's lies to go mostly unchecked. Rand is using the false claim that Obamacare and Medicare less solvent. He needs that talking point. Rather, let me correct that because it needs to be said more clearly. Ryan is using the false claim that Obamacare made Medicare less solvent. That's not true. He needs that talking point as a bridge to not only dismantling Obamacare, but to give a plausible reason for privatizing Medicare. And then there is Hillary Clinton's email server. The same media that informs all Americans on the fact that every email or post lives forever on the internet, they would have you believe that Clinton could somehow scrub her server and all her emails would disappear without a trace. I mean, makes no sense. Emails are one-to-one or one-to-many type communication. In the process, every email likely resides on many servers, not just the personal server. One should remember that the NSA or some other agency in Homeland Security is likely monitoring all the internet pipes as well. Destroying the data on the personal server does not preclude its existence elsewhere. The mainstream media characterization of the email server issue was, in fact, fake news. And it was partially responsible for making Donald Trump our president. The fake news coming from the mainstream media was mostly responsible for having us elect President Trump. Make no mistake. One could continue to present cases of ad nauseum where the mainstream media either misled or allowed themselves to be a conduit of misinformation and lies in many more instances. Their use of false equivalences defeats the purpose of journalism as the check on government and corporations. Mainstream media allow misinformation to foster an audience based on sensationalization. Let me back up. Mainstream media allow misinformation to foster an audience based on sensationalized headlines. As well, they simply become an unchallenged conduit for lies. And why do they leave lies unanswered? Chuck Todd accidentally revealed that answer when he told a truth that many already knew. He said that they don't challenge guests for the fear of not having a show. Again, what did he say? They don't challenge guests for fear of them not having a show after they make that challenge. In other words, we challenge people on the shows, they don't come back. They don't come back, we don't have a show. That's what he's saying there, folks. This new concern by the mainstream media for fake news after the election is disingenuous. And my hunch is that it is two-pronged. It is a bait and switch. They want to blame Americans' ignorance on the misinformation they receive from Facebook and other social media, thus reducing the credulity of the medium with the expectation of gaining back the audience they've lost to social media. Unfortunately, what the mainstream media wants you to ignore is they were in fact the catalyst for misinformation. The misinformers in social media saw how well the mainstream media's misinformation worked. They were great teachers. America must not allow the mainstream media to mislead them. Social media is the future. It is the future the mainstream media fears because it democratizes the dissemination of information. No longer are the big corporations, the big corporate media types, gonna be the gatekeepers of news. Americans will have to educate themselves about good and bad sources of information. It is something they have to do both with social media and mainstream media. Today's guest, my dear friends, is Tim Danahey, and Tim Danahey will be with us in a little bit. I'm pleased to have the one and only Tim Danahey of Danahey.com, the one and only Danahey.com show. How are you doing today, Tim?
I'm doing well. Delighted to be with you, and happy Thanksgiving to you, your listeners, your followers, and I know you're a good group of people. We all have a lot to be thankful.
Well, you know, Tim, this show, we're going to have a good show today. What I want to talk about, though, is what's your take? We haven't spoken since. What's your take on the election thus far?
It's kind of disappointing. There's so many lost opportunities involved with this. And Hillary Clinton, despite all of her qualities, she forgot a key demographic. She was putting together such a coalition of diverse people. She forgot the core. She forgot me. And as a result, Donald Trump was able to walk away with this election. I say walk away euphemistically, but certainly in a surprising manner, he captured the largest and broadest segment of the population.
Now, let me ask you this, because when you talk about Hillary forgot you, I think you're talking about Hillary forgot you as, and expand on that for me.
Well, I mean, as an average white man, a hardworking guy, a homeowner, just middle America. We put together coalitions of people, and that's great. Everybody's included in my life. But the issues that were important to me, I felt she spent so much of her time attacking Trump. And whenever a president is a leader, one believes that they should inspire you. I needed to be inspired. And bear in mind, Egberto, in full disclosure, I voted for her. I perhaps would have preferred someone else, but I voted for her. But I wanted to hear issues. I wanted to hear Trans-Pacific Partnership trade issues. I wanted to hear manufacturing issues. I wanted to hear tax reform issues, and tell me how we're going to leave this wilderness. And my understanding is that Bill Clinton kept telling her the same thing, and she kept blowing him off.
Okay.
And
yeah, I want to expand a little bit on that and take not a contrarian view, but ask you a specific question, because I think one of the narratives this time around was in fact similar to something that you said. However, when you look at your decision making was quite, I don't want to say quite right, because voting is a personal thing, but what interest you were looking out for. And based on your interest, you realize that knowing what she is putting out there was actually good for you as well. Now, when you tell me that she forgot a segment of the society, let's say Middle America, do you think that in Trump, Middle America saw themselves at all?
Great question, Egberto, really, because he certainly does not have anything in common with Middle America. However, he knew what the issues were that concerned Middle America. And what's startling is that already he is backing off of many of these promises that he did make to Middle America. So, Egberto, as you know, I travel all over the eastern United States, and in rural areas primarily. Everything, and I do mean everything, was Trump. I saw thousands of Trump signs and maybe a couple Clinton signs.
And I think we need to let the audience know that you have a sort of a construction business, and you are all over the state of New York, Pennsylvania, and all these different areas, and you migrate to little towns. So you actually have a pulse of outside of the city where a lot of people aren't actually taking a look at.
Yeah, perhaps, and I like to ask people. For example, in upstate New York, there's many signs saying Cuomo, not liking Cuomo. I said, why? And the big issue is he's taking our guns. Mm-hmm. The Hillary for prison signs were common, even on the street in which I live. And from people whom I respect and enjoy, it turned into a feeding frenzy of sorts. And it's such an unfortunate result for this to happen. And honestly, I think that it's going to require vigilance now more than it has been required since probably 1932. It's dangerous times in America, and I don't mean that in the fear and violence meaning. I mean it in the integrity of our democracy meaning.
I see that clearly, and actually I'm a bit more pessimistic than you are in the short term, and that is I do fear some violence, in fact, because I think there's an issue here that I want to examine, and it comes back again to what you said about Hillary having forgotten Middle America. And I want you to explore or expand on this. Who did Hillary forget, let's say, in your eyes and in the eyes of a lot of, let's say, white middle class or white working class folks in Middle America? What was it that Hillary, in your opinion, didn't represent that the working class Latino and the working class black person or the working class Asian person, how was she in the eyes of many of white middle working class America think that she was catering to them at, let's say, your expense, not you specifically, but at the expense of the white working class?
Yeah, people can sense when there is an injustice. Mm-hmm. Certainly, perhaps minority communities in the inner city sense an injustice for living, walking on the streets.
Right.
And perhaps there's an economic injustice. Would it have been good to hear how we would make things fair again? So the ladder of economic opportunity, the rungs on the ladder, are climbable again. Just give me a fair chance. Mm-hmm. And I would like to hear more of that from our politicians, rather than, I'll use Paul Ryan, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, read Ayn Rand, and it's a fictitious world that Ryan lives in. And if you were to take the OECD countries, the major countries, we have the least economic mobility of all of them. You know, the rich get richer in America and the poor stay poor. We do not have migration through that. And so those are the kind of issues I would love to see any politician, particularly Hillary, who proclaims that we're stronger together. Those are the issues that I would like to hear. I want justice for everyone. And I didn't hear it from her. And I think she could have captured that. I think in the debates, she could have captured those issues if she had gotten constitutional on us. Mm-hmm. If she had said, hey, this country is electing a president, not a generalissimo. You know, whenever Trump tends to bring all the solutions and all the power to him in his answers, she should remind him that we have a process in this country, a constitutional process of how bills are written and passed. Mm-hmm. So I would have encouraged a much more expansive campaign than simply going after Trump's character.
No, let me first say I agree that I think she should have gone through all of America. In fact, I think it's malpractice that she lost Michigan. I think it's malpractice that she lost Pennsylvania. I think it's malpractice that she lost Wisconsin. I mean, it is and Iowa, to put it bluntly. These are places that Obama won. These are places that he went there and spoke to the people, and he spoke to their hearts, and he got there. My concern, however, is what I think Trump did. And what I think Trump did was, the Clintons are famous for triangulation. They know how to put a whole lot of people together to build a coalition. Obama did that as well, but he built a clean coalition, and he actually engaged his entire coalition. He spent 80 days in Iowa. He spent a whole lot of time in Virginia. He spent a lot of time in Florida. He did what it took to really talk to these people, something that Hillary didn't do. In fact, I think Trump out-campaigned Hillary a whole lot throughout the country. But I think what is important for us to, and I'd like to hear your thoughts on this, I think the coalition that Trump built was twofold. One of the coalition was, in fact, trying to bring the working class together. But the dangerous part that I think he built is a coalition of otherwise good people believing that somehow their problems were reflected in others getting a break that they weren't getting, which in effect isn't true. And I think that is the danger of that is it pits different factions at each other. It pits white working class against the black working class, etc. Which is a thing that I always fight. One of the things I always preach is, and I think you've heard me on several shows, is I want to unite the ghettos, the barrios, and Appalachia. I mean, it's a stereotype, but you get what I mean. These are people who have shared economic interess.
Well, and Egberto, that's brilliant in what you're saying, because and we're kind of tailing off the script a little bit here, if I could be that
sure.
way. But honestly, I know prejudices still exist. I know stereotypes still exist. But what we share is that desire for the economic opportunity.
Exactly.
I don't know if I would base affirmative action on race anymore. I think I would do it on economic standing. Now, the fact that many blacks and many Hispanics are economically disadvantaged would still tend to get a disproportionate amount of benefits and programs eligible for them, but at least it's something that it's not dividing and isolating and setting quotas. Instead, it just says, hey, you need a hand. I like what you're saying, Alberto. Appalachia, barrios, ghetto, doesn't matter.
Right. Now, I have an interesting thing because I was listening to Roland Martin today. He had a show on. And one of the interesting things about Roland Martin's show is he kind of he solved a fallacy. And the fallacy is that somehow affirmative action, who it actually helps. And I don't know if you know the answer to that. Who do you think affirmative action mostly helps? By the numbers. I
don't know. Please help me on this.
White women.
Interesting.
Right.
So the quota for women, it's is what you're saying is it helps the most. Interesting.
Right. But that we don't talk about these particular issues because the people who are promoting let's say that breaking down these different programs have the wrong impression of what the program actually does. They look at the program as a giveaway as opposed to the program being a ladder. What you said make a whole lot of sense, right? In other words, if you have should affirmative action prevent a poor white person should affirmative action affect a poor white person's ability to climb the ladder that a poor black person wants to climb as well? And the answer is no. And then the next question is, does affirmative action do that? And the real answer is no. The promotion out there is that it does. And Martin had an interesting analogy. He asked that we go ahead and look at the demographics in every single field in this country. He said we can solve this problem by just reading. And what he was trying to talk about to the audience that he was speaking about, and he had some numbers that I wasn't sure of till I looked them up as well. He said, look demographically in every single field. And if you do not see if you see a disproportionate of minorities or otherwise underrepresented, how can you make the rational statement that, well, this particular program is affecting disproportionately white people or actually it's the answer is not white people, the answer is white men, because I can remember what I told you already, that it disproportionately helps white women. And this is the discussion that we have to have. And what is interesting is I wish Hillary Clinton, as you stated, would have come out, because a lot of these myths could actually be dispelled if our leaders brought it out, but they're scared to actually have the conversation. They figure if they have the conversation, they're going to lose one of their factions. And in effect, that is what tends to occur. The problem is you get a charlatan like Donald Trump to come in to the fold and bring up all these fallacies and work on that little seed in the back of everybody's head. You know, the little seed in the head that says, I need to blame somebody for what is happening to me. Look here, as opposed to looking at the ball, which is our economic system proper. Your thoughts?
Well, I mean, what you're saying is the classic manifestation of anger is to blame.
Right.
You know, is to blame something else. It's never the angry person's fault. It's always somebody else's fault.
Right.
And Trump saw that. He built a campaign based on anger and was able to blame the people on the other side of the wall. You know, the people overseas who are building things and not competing well. Blame, blame, blame all the way through. And he built a campaign on anger. America is an angry country, but why? And Berto, if you look at it, isn't it interesting? I was thinking about it while driving today, that we say we're such a divided country. Mm-hmm. we were a divided country in the 1840s, slavery.
Right.
It was horrible. We were a divided country perhaps in the 1930s, perhaps. I think, what's dividing us today? If you really put your finger on it, there's nothing really that we can't solve, And so why are these little, please bear in mind when I use the term little things, I don't mean to.
I know what you mean, yeah.
One issue or anything else, but it's not slavery that's dividing us and threatening to tear this country apart. What is it? What it is the inability to compromise and to work together to come up with solutions. It is the most bizarre. It would be the most bizarre reason for a nation to ever fail. We need to realize, and it sounds like a political slogan, what we have in common is far greater than what divides us. We've both heard that phrase before, but why isn't that coming forth?
We are speaking to Tim Danahey of Danahey.com, the Tim Danahey Radio Show. He's with us from Pennsylvania. What city in Pennsylvania?
Easton, Pennsylvania, right overlooking the river, and across the river is New Jersey.
Right across the river. We'll be back shortly. Welcome back to Politics Done Right. Our guest today is Tim Danahey of the Tim Danahey Radio Show. You can listen to his great work at Danahey.com. So Tim, we ended the last segment with an interesting question. You wondered why it is we don't have slavery, we don't have a lot of these issues that were very dividing back in the 80s, back in the 1880s, 1860s rather is what I should say, back in the 2000, early 1900s. But I'll posit something. Most people on the planet are good people. Most people. And I see that all over the place. What I find is if you want to have a dominant class, and a dominant class first of all, a dominant class is a minority. And a dominant class requires some mechanism to keep the masses in check. That is that is in effect what we do in this country. That is in effect why Hillary couldn't make the case that she needed to make. That is the reason why Trump could make the case that he made. And I'm going to go a little bit deeper than that in a second. We know that the easiest way to get people at each other's throats is to get back at that little seed in the back of our heads that we have yet to grow out of, because we cannot grow out of it, particularly in this generation, in my opinion. As we mature the country further on, it will occur. But right now, in order for a plutocracy to maintain its power, it has to keep the masses in check. And if the masses are working together, they are going to realize that the reason for the economic angst of all the folks right now is particularly dependent on many folks, or a few folks, taking a much larger share of what the current economic structure is able to provide. And that is what we see. When you hear about a company every year having to have a 5% growth, a 10% growth, that is what's known as exponential growth. It's unsustainable. If an economy is growing at 2%, you can't have people growing. You can't have people growing at 10, 15%. You cannot. It means that those spoils are coming out of the spoils of the masses. And the only way you can get away with having an economic system that can maintain that is to somehow have these guys below you think that you are not the problem, but that each other is the problem. But given that that is illogical, the only thing you can then do is work on the something else that's illogical. And that is bringing the factors like the immigrants are taking your jobs away. The blacks are taking your jobs away. And all these different issues. I had a program on Saturday where I had an input from one of the guys. You know, you talk about the white man that have been made to believe that he's in a class that's being aggrieved, to which Donald Trump wants those folk to believe they are in an aggrieved class, because then it takes away the reality that the reason Youngstown, Ohio is depressed, the reason why the suburbs outside of Detroit, many of them are depressed, it's because you mentioned earlier TPP. Well, we don't call it TPP, but other factors that are causing those problems. But at the same time, those people believe, because of Trump stoking their ethnic problem, some racial issue, that is a problem. And then it brings that feeling that you have among, in particular, in my opinion, and you can refute me if you will, white men believing, oh, they're only talking about women, they're only talking about black folk, they're only talking about Latinos. What about me? Your thoughts?
I want to talk about this country.
Yeah.
You know, and this is going to sound trite, Egberto, but I really don't care if I have a woman president. I don't care if I have a black president. I don't care if a Hispanic man has more money than me. I don't care. Mm-hmm. You know, it's just one of those things whereby they've earned it.
Right.
You know, one must assume it. You know, that is their path. I don't care. I care more about this country and making sure that we all have opportunities. And I often cite J.P. Morgan, who back in around 1900 said, what we will do is divide the people over silly little social issues while we move our agenda steadily forward.
Did he say that?
He did.
Wow.
And so they come up with these little issues that divide us and distract us, and we must not do that, Egberto. You know, it's the people in inner city Baltimore. I do not want to succeed at their expense. I want them to succeed with me. And if I was in a position to invest in inner city Baltimore and employ people, I would, because I believe there are good people there too. You know, it's all of us, mm-hmm. and that's what it's all about.
But Tim, I want to interrupt you for a second, because sure. You know, we know who you are, okay, and my thing is, however, there is and I don't know how to put this. We know who you are, and you're a rational thinker, and we know where your heart is. And we also know that you know the material. My question to you, though, is how... We know what the problem is. I think both of us have expressed it. Our audience probably understands what the problem is as far as the economic problem, etc. We also know that a lot of folks are misled into what that problem really is. So my question to you is, how do we reach, and I don't want to just sound trite the way I say this, but how do we reach white men to realize that they are in the game with us, unlike the rhetoric that many and specifically on the right would like to promote, that we need everybody. I mean, it's something that I've been preaching within the Democratic Party, with in some of the instances when I do hear things like where there are disparities in some folks. I'm always like, what we need to do is bring in everybody into the party and make everybody feel just as welcome within the party. So what is it that you think needs to be done so that those guys that, and I'm not talking about the white guys who voted for Obama. I'm talking about the white guys who voted for Reagan and never came back.
You know, I'm going to kind of paraphrase Gandhi on this one.
Right.
And he said, be bold, be truthful, be kind. Mm-hmm. You know, And there's a power in that. And so if you want to tell them the truth, you tell people the truth, and you just say, hey, this is, I cited an OECD number earlier, say something is seriously wrong. And if we want to politicize this and say the Democratic Party, they should use that and say, Paul Ryan, you say that we need to dismantle all of this, but the truth of the matter is it's harder. People are not getting ahead. Absolute free enterprise does not exist. Mr. Ryan, you supported these industries specifically, and they are donors to your party. And we need to get numbers out there, facts, and indisputable facts, the truth. We need to present them not in a hysterical or angry way, but in a kind and truthful way. We cannot obscure the facts. And again, I'm speaking as I would a Democrat. Get the truth out there and be accurate with it and do it in a way that would rally people. That's how you get the white guy. Because typically, and again, the white male has been the most educated in the past, although white women are now, I think, surpassing them. But the thing is, we're not stupid. Nobody's stupid. Everybody knows. We could go into, again, I hate to pick on Baltimore, but we could go into inner city Baltimore, and we could talk with people there, and they may not be able to verbalize the numbers and say OECD, nations, but they know something's wrong. And then the conversation can begin. That's what will unite us. And what will unite us is the truth, not the politics.
Yeah, now, I agree with that. That is what would unite us. But I want to go back a little bit on something that you said. I think when you say you have to talk to the white guy, I wonder sometimes if a lot of the white guys that I'm speaking to on air or whatever are guys like you. Okay? In other words, well-read, know the material, and I can speak that too. However, do you think? I'll be frank. I think I would have a hard time getting across to, let's say, some of the people at a Trump rally, because there's some preconceived notions there. You now, as a middle of the road white guy, meaning as far as within middle America, you're in Pennsylvania, close to the hills, etc., etc., etc. You have I'll put it bluntly. I think guys like you have a responsibility, which for all practical purposes you've been doing with the show, but we need so many more to challenge that disinformation that we have right now, that again put within many white men, that somehow they have to go another way because these type of economic programs and models that we're looking for would help them. In fact, they went with Trump and Ryan. That's who they voted for. In order under the false assumption that was better for them, because their success depended on getting rid of a whole bunch of folk and getting rid of some programs for yet another bunch of folks. We need folks who are willing to do the necessary education, as you were pointing out. And as we say, you fit Bill.
Well, everybody has their part in this, but let's again, we're talking politics, and ordinarily yes. I don't like it. Do you want to know how the Democrats can perhaps start to make that inroads?
Let me hear it. That's what we want.
Would the Democrats be willing to say, we don't want your guns, we keep them? Let's say Second Amendment. Let's I'm sounding like Frank Muntz here or whatever.
Frank Luntz.
Luntz. I have great respect for him, incidentally, although I wish he was working for the Democrats. The Democrats should say we are not pro-abortion, we are pro-Constitution. We hate abortion, but we are for Constitution. We need to say things a little differently so people understand. And just say, we want you to understand that tax cuts do not generate jobs. Here is the proof.
Right. We have the proof. Yeah.
Yeah. And that honestly is. And start to explain bigger picture items. But whenever you're talking about home and faith and guns, let's face it, this is America. It's our heritage of sorts, and we need to give up on some issues and save it to fight another day. But we need to change our attitude and demystify the fact that we are not for Middle America. We care about Middle America. We care about the ranchers. We care about the farmers, the small ranchers. They're getting abused by big corporations. That's the fight that needs to be done. We need to enforce antitrust, because when they get so big, your cable bill is bigger because there's only a couple media providers. Wouldn't you like to have a cable provider that is as inexpensive as the rest of the world? Or wouldn't you like to have faster internet, which is cheaper, just like the rest of the world? We need to get these things out there that touch people in their homes and understand how it's connected to the bigger issue. And I think it can be done, but I don't think it's going to be done by any Democrat that I see in the horizon right now.
We're speaking to Tim Danahey of the Danahey Show, the Tim Danahey Radio Show at Danahey.com. We'll be right back. We're back with Tim Danahey of the Tim Danahey Radio Show, Danahey.com. Don't forget, folks, visit Danahey.com, where you can hear the wonderful shows that my brother from Pennsylvania talks on several times. Okay, Tim, I've got a notice or I am today from a good friend. It was an old coffee party member. This guy was a Republican. He held a high office in the Republican Party. I don't remember what state. I want to say Virginia or one of these states. And he was one of our most devoted coffee party members, but he kind of had a bad feeling when he thought things were going pretty liberal. But I received notices over the last few months from Mike where I could see him changing in his in the way he thought. I don't know if he changed in the way he thought about things, or his party went so far to the right that it sort of caused him to creep more to the center. Well, I received I am from him, and he said he had a new article, and it was out at Patheos, a few other blog sites, and he asked me to read it, and I took a read of it, and I said, hey, can I publish this? Because it was a wonderful piece, and if you get a chance, go to egbertowillies.com and take a look at his piece. It's very good. But one of the things that he said is that we are at the point in time where we have to do something. We cannot be quiet about what's going on in America right now with Donald Trump. And he posits that if we stay silent, we would regret it. And he didn't use the big H word, but within the threads of his essay, you could actually detect that that's what he was driving at. What are your thoughts about what can we do? What kind of civil engagement and necessarily civil disobedience do you think is warranted, if at all, in your opinion?
Well, Egberto, you and I, and I think Bobby Rodrigo, we've done shows on rise of fascism. Mm-hmm. And we've done a study on it, the 14 signs of fascism.
Right.
And we are perilously close to that, perilously. And we do need to get involved. And in fact, to that end, I went to my first protest rally a week ago, and it was "He's Not My President" rally, and I was not wild about the theme of it.
I don't like that theme either. It's not my president isn't my theme, but go ahead.
Yeah. However, I knew the underlying reasons that the people were protesting, and that was, make sure that we adhere to constitutional principles.
Right.
And so I said, okay, I'll go down there and be part of it. And I don't want to stray on this, but I will bring it back, okay? So trust me on this one, Egberto. And so I went down there, and there was probably about 100 people in the town square in Easton that were campaigning "He's Not My President," or special issues, voting rights, or don't deport, whatever it might be. And it was great. But across the street were perhaps 25 flag-waving people swearing, saying Trump is our president. One man had a very good and rational sign. He goes, "Trump is our president. That's how democracy works." I respect that. I wanted to cross the street and shake his hand and say, "Hey, we're cool with that." But the other ones were really instigating and violent and angry. One was wearing a Wild West bank robber bandana over his face and wouldn't show himself. And they would come across the 25. Give them a label that you would like to, Egberto, but they would come across one at a time. They would come across the street with a flag, and they'd get in the face of the liberal crowd. And the liberal crowd, to their credit, whenever that guy would come in and yell and try and instigate something, they would all in unison shout out, "When they go low, we go high. Wow. They go low, we go high."
Wow!
And I was very heartened by that because it totally shut down the confrontation.
Exactly.
And he had to crawl and go across back the street, unsuccessful in trying to get a rise out of the group. And so I was very proud of what they're doing. People were gathering signatures. Another organization was formed trying to get more progressive people in local politics and positions, and it was good. I said I would bring this back, Egberto, and that is Henry David Thoreau famously went to jail because he refused to pay his taxes because his money was going to support the Mexican-American War. And he was in jail and would not post bail. His friend, Ralph Waldo Emerson, came down and said, "Henry, what are you doing in jail?" And Henry David Thoreau said to Emerson, he says, "The question is, why aren't you here?" And that's what we have to do is let people know that it's okay. And we have to learn to protest wisely. Absolute and total nonviolence. If somebody is instigating things or throwing things or being profane, you've got to back away and let them isolate them. We have to make it so showing up, not yelling on the front lines or carrying, just being there is a cool thing to do. It's an American thing to do. And your friend Mike is absolutely right. We must, and it has to be, but we have to do it wisely to get people involved.
Now, his statement was present. Make no mistake, Trump represents a decisive break with everything that has come before. The election really is different. This election really is different. Hence the imperative of dissent and nonviolent civil resistance. Dissent challenges the false but comforting narrative of continuity with the reality of rupture. At the dawn of the Trump regime, dissent and nonviolent acts of civil disobedience are the two essential mechanisms for preserving our own integrity and avoiding complicity in a newly emergent form of radical political evil. In this regard, the greatest challenge we face isn't overcoming our fear, but rather the conscience-dulling effects of our comfort and complacency. This is the inertia that keeps us silently at work in our offices and cubicles and out of the streets. But be warned, in the age of Trump, silence is complicity in the lie. Silence makes accomplices and accessories of us all. Wisdom from Mike Stafford.
It's brilliant. And also what he wrote is very similar to what Mussolini wrote. He said the next revolution will occur while workers stand at their stations, clerks are at their desks, and farmers toil in the field. They won't know it's happened.
Right.
Because they were complacent and at work. And so in order to fight that, he broke up the labor unions first, just like Hitler did, because that was the only unifying catalyst for people to get together and rally against the government. And so Mike is 100% right. We must. And so if there are more rallies, which I agree, and if they are nonviolent, I will be happy to be part of them.
Absolutely. And I think we're gearing up for all of that. And I think that is where we're heading to. But Mike was absolutely right in the way he wrote the piece. Again, for those people who haven't read the piece, go to egbertowillies.com and look up the article. It's a wonderful article. It's the first one on for today. Well, Tim Danahey, it was a pleasure as usual having you. Tim Danahey of the Tim Danahey Show, Danahey.com. Thank you so kindly for having been here with us. This is Politics Done Right. My name is Egberto Willies. Thank you so kindly for spending this time with me. Adios.
Thank you very much for listening to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. You can personally reach me by sending an email to egberto@politicsdoneright.com. Remember, Egberto is spelled E-G-B-E-R-T-O. Change starts with you. 90.1 KPFT gives you information not tainted by corporate interest. Please visit kpft.org and contribute. Let's ensure continued access to real information and news remain available to all. Again, thank you very much for listening to Politics Done Right.